Welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast, proudly presented by Venture Hunting and Outdoors. If you're like us and passionate about hunting, spearfishing, and many other outdoor-related pursuits, with an eagerness to fast-track your learning, then this is the podcast for you.
We are back. Welcome to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. Today we are continuing our mini-series with Austin Atkinson from Huntin Fool, where we jump in and we're shifting from elk for last week into deer species across the Midwest. So whether it's mule deer or whether you're a whitetail nut, we're going to be breaking down opportunities across the US to go and get some tags, go on some hunts with your mates, and go and chase some deer. So I know personally I am a mule deer lover. I'm a fanatic. I can't wait to go and chase them this year. But it was also super interesting talking about whitetail opportunities in North America. I mean, it is the most hunted big game species over there. So obviously there's a reason that people are so addicted to them. It's not just the opportunities they present. But we get some help from Austin talking about opportunities, but also breaking down a little bit of hunt strategies and talking about some of the characteristics of these animals. If you guys want to jump in and get a Huntin Fool membership, please make sure to email applications@huntinfool.com.au, or equally, you can get on their website at huntinfool.com and go to the Contact Us section and fill it out there. And one of their loyal and very experienced hunting advisors will jump on and contact you to organise your hunt. And it's something that we've teamed up with them for, just because they're a wealth of knowledge, and the experiences that Aiden and I have had is truly due to all the planning and preparation from the Huntin Fool team. They've been an absolute wealth of knowledge and just so lovely to work with. And so we've jumped on and we're doing this little mini series opening up what opportunities there are in North American big game hunting. So if you want to use their service, please use one of those options there and get in contact with the team. We'll also be jumping into some FAQs at the end of the podcast. If you have a listener question that you want answered on the podcast, please email us at info@twinelements.com.au with the subject line FAQ. Equally, you can send us a message on Instagram at James Dooms's Outdoors, Aiden Dooms's Outdoors, or the Twin Elements account, and we'll answer that in a future podcast. But let's jump into talking with Austin from Huntin Fool and discussing how we can get you guys on a deer hunt.
I have personally been using Hoyt bows for over 20 years now, building the most innovative and technological advanced gear. Their carbon bows are the lightest, leanest, and ultra compact on the market. Quite frankly, I treat mine like hell, throwing it around, banging it on rocks and scrub. Time and time again, it has performed when I've needed it the most. Get serious, get Hoyt.
Well, welcome back to our North American big game hunting series. We've got Austin back for another episode. Today, we're going to be breaking down hunting deer. So we're going to split it into two parts. We've got a mule deer section and a whitetail section, just following on from the elk podcast. Last week, we figured this is probably the next category that most of our South Pacific hunters would like to listen to. And try and go on that hunt in the future. So that's what we're going to be delivering to you guys this week. Welcome back, Austin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So we'll jump in, and I think what we'll probably do is do the mule deer first. I think that's probably going to be the bigger one for our listeners. Do you, I realize they cover a huge sparse of land in the US. Do you want to maybe break down a few habits about mule deer, maybe talk about early and late season, and just how hard and cagey they are to hunt, talk about everything mule deer, and just give our listeners an introduction.
For sure. Yeah, I wanted to even step back just a little bit, James, and just talk about the 5 species of deer that we recognize in the United States. And those are typically the ones that most people want to hunt and try to collect all 5, if you will. I know you guys have deer slams down there in Australia, and oftentimes we want to collect all the subspecies. And In the United States, we have 5 that are generally recognized by like Boone and Crockett or Pope and Young. And that's the mule deer, the whitetail deer, the Coues whitetail deer, and then 2 species of blacktail deer, the Columbia blacktail and the Sitka blacktail. Obviously, the most hunted deer species is whitetail because they exist in 47 of the 50 states here in this country. Mule deer only exist in half of the states. So it's about 22 states that have mule deer, generally in the western half. So if you go to the east side of the U.S., you won't find mule deer. If you come to the west side, you'll find primarily mule deer with some whitetail intermixed. 2 totally different deer species, as you mentioned. Mule deer are kind of seen as the icon of the western United States, if you will. There's been a lot of work to reintroduce mule deer and to get them more to sustainable huntable populations. But they are a deer species, so we run into a lot of disease issues. We run into predation and everything else that keeps them from growing. But mule deer, they're the icon. I love hunting mule deer, and they're one of my favorite because it's difficult to shoot a really big mule deer. It's very difficult, but it's something you can hunt about every year, depending on if you're willing to travel. So there's no excuse to not be in the woods. From the mountains to the plains, a mule deer can adapt and live just about everywhere, anywhere he wants.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with those 5 deer species, do you ever see, so like in Australia, there's some like Samba and Rusa can interbreed, for example. Do you ever see like at those 5 deer species, ever interbreed? Like if a mule deer and a mule deer buck and a whitetail doe ever cross paths in the lonely hours of the night, can that, ever lead to some beautiful mutant in the future or not really?
I mean, I'm definitely not a veterinarian or a genetic study scientist or anything, but, it can happen. Genetically, it can happen. It typically does not. Sometimes we hear the term hybrid or deer hybrid. We use that term to downplay someone else's trophy. Be like, oh, that Coues deer probably mixed with a mule deer, and that's why it was so much bigger than it should have been. And so we're trying to discredit your big Coues whitetail deer. But I don't think it happens as much as people might think. I've hunted many areas where mule deer will be right next to whitetail does, live in the same habitat, eat the same fields. And I've never personally seen a mule deer whitetail hybrid, even though they are running side by side. So I don't think it happens as much as maybe we would think.
Yeah, cool. And so with the mule deer, I guess the hunt, like I've normally done them, to be honest, it was for like a day after an archery hunt for elk a few years ago, because I had the combo tag again in Montana, and they were just coming out of velvet in September, or just hard velvet sort of thing. Because I think the beauty of mule deer, at least, is you get such a huge season in terms of like when you can actually hunt them. Have you got a personal preference, for favorite time of year, whether you like chasing them in early velvet up in the high country, or do you like chasing them when they're rutting more in, November, for example? Talk to that maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I like hunting mule deer either early season or late. So in their yearly cycle, they will shed their antlers in February, March, which is just the start of spring for us. Their antlers will fall off and they'll start growing their new set. So by July, August, they're covered in velvet. Their antlers are full of blood. They're very tender to them before the blood hardens and the blood flow stops. So they generally will spend time out of the trees, out of the brush and the timber. And so that's when we find the deer at high elevations, chasing the green up, the forbs, the flowers that are at the highest elevations they can get to in the summer to avoid the heat and to get the best food that they can. we always call that like a summer pattern, because the deer will be in their bachelor groups, typically multiple bucks together. They want nothing to do with does or females. And that's July, August in most states. Around then is when the archery seasons will start, and they usually give bow hunters the first chance to go out into the field in most of these states and actually hunt. What that entails is more spot and stock, high elevation, steep mountains, if there are mountains in that state. Then that's one of my favorite times to hunt. It's difficult because it's steep, but those deer are a little more predictable. He's going to lay by a certain tree. He's going to feed in certain feed, and he's probably going to go back to that same tree to lay down. He's not going to be on the move. But around that, second, third week of September, when he hardens his antlers, he's going to go scrape. He's going to go shed his velvet and scrape it off. And then he wants nothing to do with his buddies, right? So all those bucks that he's been hanging out with all summer, keeping an eye out for one another, he leaves them. And this becomes a more difficult time to hunt, meaning late September, mid-October. Those deer will often drop elevation. They can handle being in thick timber because their antlers are hard. They're scraping, they're shining them up, and they are thinking about does, but really they're just storing their energy, waiting for the rut. So oftentimes that's what we'll call a migratory hunt or a mid-level hunt, where the deer have left the high mountains, but they're not down in the low country where they're going to rut where the does are. They're just in the middle. Oftentimes that's really thick. It's full of aspen trees or oak trees. It becomes difficult to hunt, and that's when the majority of our hunting seasons happen. And that's kind of by design. That's the tradition, is hunt deer before the rut, out of the velvet growing season, when it's most difficult. It allows us to give more permits and not kill as many deer. So most states will have deer seasons in the month of October, which is fall season. The leaves will start to change colors, fall off the trees, but the deer are still tough to find. And then in most states, what happens in November, it kind of starts at a higher latitude. So if you're looking at Canada, which is north of us, the rut will start up there, say early November. And then as the further south you go, the rut will progress later into the fall and winter season. So a rut in Canada for mule deer is, say, the first week in November. As you come further south into Utah, it's going to be the third week of November. You go south to Arizona, it'll be close to the 1st of December. You go even further south into Mexico, hunting mule deer, they're not going to rut until January. Everything's just, the time clock is turned back. All mule deer will, they don't shed and grow their velvet, maybe like axis deer, where it's based on when they're born, and they kind of have their own cycle. They may be in the velvet, they may be hardhorn. Everything follows the same pattern with mule deer. It just depends on what latitude you're at and how far north or south you are. So I like hunting early, like I said, in the velvet, or late, because once those deer start to rut, now he's going to be on the move. He's going to pop out of the timber, and he's looking for doe deer. So oftentimes they're down in the sagebrush hills. They're lower elevation. They're a little more visible. They might stay out and on their feet during daylight hours, when in October they may only move at night. So that rut time, when everybody wants to find the biggest bucks and they show up, that's going to be November to December in most of these western states. Those tags are going to be harder to get, like we'll talk about, because they're just very vulnerable animals at that point. Anybody can see them, not near as hard to kill, and that's when they rut. So they breed the does. As soon as they're done with that, boom, they're back in bachelor groups or on their own, shed their antlers in the middle of winter, and the cycle starts again, with fawns being born in about, June, right in the middle of our summer.
Originating in Texas, USA, Numa Outdoors has formulated a durable, breathable, quiet and comfortable camouflage lineup for all terrain, seasons and pursuits. You may have seen us across our socials running the new Renegade lineup in our recent Northern Territory adventures. That's because the Renegade lineup is perfect for early season, hot and humid conditions in the heat. We're pleased to announce that the Numa Camouflage lineup is stocked exclusively by Venture Hunting and Outdoors here in Australia and available now. Head to their website to check out the whole range today.
Like during that rut period, because just speaking from my experience, which has only been during September, and it's probably something I just wanted to highlight for our listeners, like the deer over there, and I think it's purely just them being such heavily predated on from mountain lions all the time and wolves and all that type of thing. Like you have to be that next level of alert. But compared to our fallow deer and even axis deer, they were just that next level of cagey. Like it wasn't you broke a little twig at 50 yards, it's fine. Like there was a bit of a breeze, it won't hear you. It's like, no, they're just gone. Like even, I mean, like I said, I only had a day to go and stalk or hunt. It was an afternoon hunt and a morning hunt. And I remember finding this little forky on like the last morning, bedded up in the side of a hill. So I was out of the sun at first light. And I remember sneaking up like you see like on social media all the time, like up above him. And I'm like sitting there and I was just like, I don't know, probably 15 yards above him waiting for him to get up and move and readjust so I could get a shot. And I remember just like shifting my heel down to after like edging out to see, because I could just see the tops of his antlers, and my foot just went like on the smallest stick, like not even like I barely heard it. He was just like boom, antlers up, gone, like 2 seconds, just out of there as fast as he could across the drainage, like looking back. And then obviously once he's looking at me like that, I'm very, very silhouetted. But the whole experience of that day just really sort of reiterated to me how alert they are. And so, Aiden and I this year are going to be putting a bit more time into them. So pretty excited to hopefully get our first deer on the ground over there. But they are definitely a different kettle of fish, even from the elk, I think, just because maybe the elk are a bit bigger. The deer and the whitetail especially too. Even haven't really hunted them. They were just in the area that I was in Montana, and very similar things. Like they just, always alert, always looking around, as you can imagine, being predated on so heavily from everything over there that you've got.
Typically, whitetail are the most cagey and often said that they are the most difficult deer to hunt as far as being sensitive to smell and what they can hear, what they can see. But a smart mule deer is very, very difficult to hunt as well. And it's like you said, everything is trying to kill them, from the mountain lions, the weather, the grizzly bears, the coyotes. Everything's trying to kill these deer. And they don't rely on their eyesight as much as, say, an open plains animal like an antelope would, where they can see. So, mule deer can be very, very jumpy, where an elk will maybe be curious and stand their ground. Mule deer, they all have a different tolerance depending on if they live next to a highway and they see people every day. They may not be as scared, but they know what's going on. They have great hearing. They call them a mule deer because they have those big mule type floppy ears. And so they can pick up everything, and it makes them difficult to hunt for sure. Now, depending on the time of the year, he does get stupid in the rut, and he's not as sensitive to sound, and you can get away with more during the rut. But when you're doing that, you've got a whole bunch of does that are still on edge watching you, and it makes it tough.
Is there calling, like, we'll jump into the whitetail after talking about tag opportunities, but like with mule deer, can you, like, do they vocalize at all during the rut? Can you rattle, or something like that, or rake a tree, do doe calls? Like, is there any of that type of stuff that you can do to sort of, sweeten them up into bow range and get them to come in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for whitetail, we hear of that a lot, and there's a lot of people that do it. But for mule deer, outside of a short grunt, I have not ran into many people that have luck with rattling in or calling deer in. Maybe to locate them in a super thick area, but you can't hear that grunt very far away. And Are they a curious deer during the rut? Yes, but most of the time during the rut, they're in more visible areas where it would be hard, where they would just come unseen to you, like in thick timber. Chances are they're going to see you, and they're not going to cross a field to leave their does to come check you out in the wide open. I don't know of many people having that much luck with mule deer on that.
Well, I think now what we might do is, for all our listeners, we'll sort of split it up like what we did the elk one, where I think a lot of people are probably going to want to do it as a DIY hunt. Same thing, whether it be out of a motel, a car, or whether they go into the backcountry, more just talking about tag opportunities. Is it as hard to draw a mule deer tag as it is to get an elk tag nowadays, or is it a little bit easier?
It's the sky's the limit. There's no reason to not get a mule deer tag every year. You can get one in multiple states, but the top end premium mule deer hunts in the West are more difficult than elk tags oftentimes. So there's a huge span of how hard it is to get the tag, and most of it comes down to the availability of trophy glass bucks.
Yeah, well, I actually have a friend who he's been applying for 25 years, I think, in Colorado to get this mule deer tag, and just found out that he didn't get it again this year. So he'll be with me and Aiden chasing elk and deer. But he was pretty gutted. I'm not going to lie. 25 years of applying for a tag. There's a lot of pressure in that too. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure there's a huge deer in there, but that's like, I don't know. What if you don't find that huge deer? What if, it's scary. Yeah. It is scary. There's a lot of pressure in those type of hunts. And I'm a little bit happy I'm not holding that tag.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with waiting that long and applying for a trophy hunt, as long as you're hunting every year, and that person's probably hunting elsewhere. It's not like he's waiting on his one and only mule deer hunt for a quarter of a century. He's probably still hunting mule deer in other states, other places. He just really wants that tag in Colorado, and that's a similar strategy that I would recommend for a lot of people. There's no reason to wait for some special mule deer hunt. The best mule deer hunters are the ones that hunt more often. And I think that's what draws people to mule deer hunting, is it's not just location, it's an element of getting lucky and being in just an area that has deer. If you hunt an area, you learn an area, you come back every other year, whatever it may be, you learn how to hunt them. Eventually those hunters will luck into a really nice buck. And that's very rewarding, when you can't say that same thing for other species. So a big deer can come from anywhere, literally.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I guess, I don't know where you want to start. I'll probably leave it up to you, just because I know less about mule deer than I do elk, and even less about whitetail than I do mule deer. So with tag opportunities, talk, I guess, bow and rifle, which I'm assuming is probably going to be a bit more early and late season hunts. And then I guess just go by state again, what opportunities there is, starting with, probably just the OTC opportunities, if there is any, and all the way up to maybe a 3 to 5 year plan. And then I guess, again, we'll go into the different guided options and landowner tags, and that if someone just wants to, have a bit more comfort or a bit of guidance and that type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I think it makes most sense. I'll talk about them state by state, because some states have over the counter and draw, or archery and rifle. So the number one state we talk about with mule deer is Colorado. Colorado has a larger deer population than most states, and they have some of the biggest deer in the West. Historically, 20 years ago, Colorado had very, very big record book type deer coming out of almost every unit every year. They've since come down, but every mule deer population has decreased over the last 20 years. There's a lot of efforts being done, especially in Colorado, to keep deer numbers up, to avoid disease, and to make sure everybody can hunt. But it's a tough species. They're proving very difficult to manage. to our objectives, and to have a good split of big deer but healthy deer, and not too many deer but have enough for hunters. So it's been tough, but Colorado is hard to not talk about because they have so many hunts that you have to draw. All deer tags in Colorado, there's no over-the-counter deer. It's all through a draw system. But you don't have to wait 20 or 25 years. You can hunt Colorado on a 0-point unit, meaning you have no points. It's your first year applying. You can find a unit to do that in every year. If you're willing to hunt maybe more rough country, wilderness areas, lower deer density areas, you can go every year. So they do an archery season in September, a muzzleloader season that overlaps in the middle of September, and then they do 3 rifle seasons from October, the first part of November, and then the middle of November being the 4th rifle season, or what should be in the rut or post-rut. So the majority of deer tags fall in the 2nd and 3rd rifle seasons, which is end of October, middle of November. And those are when most of the tags get issued. How to select a unit? Sky's the limit. You can find it if you want a backpack hunt, if you like hunting from a motel, like you said, if you want to drive around. But any mule deer hunt with a firearm is going to require glassing, patience, stalking, and passing a lot of smaller deer to try to find a mature buck. But Colorado, it's a great investment. Everybody should be applying in Colorado before that April 1st deadline. If you don't draw or you're still building points, you can buy what's called a landowner voucher in Colorado. So a private landowner will receive a license in the draw just like an applicant, and then he can resell that license to anybody he wants. Most landowner tags will run a few $1,000s, so it's more expensive to bypass the draw. But if you buy that voucher, you're entitled to the same tag as if you drew it in the draw. So I would recommend everybody applies for some points, at least for deer in Colorado. Plan a hunt, whether it's 1 year out or 5 years out. What it is now is a preference draw, meaning if you don't have the points, you can't get the tag. So you can look forward and say, I want to hunt a 2-point unit. I know I need to wait 2 years to buy a deer point, and on that 3rd year, I'll be able to get the tag. That's as simple as their system is, and you'll be able to go. So Colorado's first on my list for mule deer hunters.
Know where you stand with onX, the most accurate GPS mapping tech for outdoor enthusiasts, trusted by millions of hunters worldwide. We utilize onX whilst hunting in the US. Its mapping systems, specialist drop pins, tracking features, topographical maps, and accuracy is unmatched. Being able to plan and prepare for our hunts overseas in the comfort of our own home is a game changer. If you're looking at hunting in the US, Canada, or Alaska, then onX is a must. And what you've mentioned a couple of times that the numbers are down across the board with deer. Is that mainly, hard winter, kills for fawns, or is that increased predation, or is that disease, or what's causing that? Because even when we were in Montana last, they had the same thing where they were talking about mountain lions, and they were talking about hard winters for a couple of years. Like what's causing the numbers to be low, and do you think they're going to come back, or is this the new norm?
And that's about $1 billion question right now in the United States. That's a tough one to answer. I have my own opinions. The deer numbers were very high back in the 1970s, 1980s. We had a lot of deer. Like Utah alone had 4 times as many deer back then. A big part that I think we often overlook is poison. Back then, we took care of our predators. 1080 strychnine was a very popular poison. They would drop it out of airplanes, and we killed essentially every bear, wolf, coyote, fox, anything that could kill a deer or an elk. We killed it. Obviously, that's been outlawed. It's illegal to use, especially on public lands, but anywhere you can't use it. So after that, we had huge influxes in predators. We manage predators, we manage lions, we manage bears, but overall, we just have a lot more predators than we used to. Now, the state agencies are trying to figure out what to do, and there's localized events, right? We have drought in southern Utah where we won't get, 2 inches of rain in an entire year. It's really bad. It kills a lot of deer. In the northern states like Montana, they may have winter episodes where the deep winter snow, like we lost the majority of our mule deer herd in Wyoming 2 years ago. Bad snow, they can't get down to winter feed, and they die. Now, snow has always happened. It's nothing new, but where do we build all our housing communities and where do we build our grocery stores? We build them right in the middle of wintering ground for mule deer. So we're hurting the mule deer ourselves by taking away their habitat, by letting predators have free reign. We let wild horses come in some states. I mean, every state's got a little bit different reason why the mule deer numbers are down, but nobody knows. There's not one answer for all mule deer to bring them back. It's probably the new normal for a while.
Yeah, it's just a lot more pressures on them, from predation, but also reduced resources to enable the population to flourish. And it's one of these beautiful, like we see it here in Australia a bit, where a new population will start up and, before too long, the numbers are out of control. But I mean, all it takes is one helicopter shoot or something like that to, in the form of a big aerial predator, take out a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand, and all of a sudden the populations are back to, seeing the odd deer rather than seeing 10s and 20s like people were used to. So, I guess it all goes in ebbs and flows, but hopefully the numbers come back. Is elk being reestablished in certain areas another factor? Like obviously in size, one elk might be 3 or 4 mule deer, just say in how much they eat. Like has elk numbers improved in some states, which then also may be putting a bit of pressure on deer numbers, or is that not really a factor?
There hasn't been as many studies published on that yet, because elk are so new in most of these states. Elk were about exterminated in the United States until 100 years ago, when they started replacing them out in places like Arizona and New Mexico. There was no elk anywhere. There's just a few left in Yellowstone, and that's why we call them the Yellowstone elk or the Rocky Mountain elk. So mule deer were everywhere. As we put elk in all these new places, they tell us elk is a grazer. He eats grasses, where a mule deer is a browser. He's not competing, but let's be real. When the winter's bad and there's a lot of snow on the ground, they'll eat anything to stay alive. And I think they do compete, because like Utah, even 40 years ago, we did not have very many elk in Utah. You could count them on one hand. And now we have thousands and thousands of elk everywhere. I think they do compete to some level. And elk are just hardier animals. They don't die in a one bad winter. They can walk a lot further to find water and find food. And a mule deer, he just tips over and dies. So very, very different species, and they are competing, but it's been hard to decide how much.
No, it's cool. And with going back into Colorado, so is there, obviously getting a tag seems pretty easy. With those rifle, prime rifle tags during the rut and stuff, is there still places where people, not so much over the counter, but people can get tags relatively easy and just say 0 to 1 or 2 years of applying, or is it normally 4 or 5 sort of years of applying to get up some points before you can go on a hunt? And also just on these hunts, are you sort of expecting to see some deer and get some opportunities at just say a mature 4x4, or is it going to be filled with just little forkies and whatever else?
Yeah, there's no reason in Colorado you couldn't find a 3-point or 4-point on any unit. Some of the easier to draw units just have more rough country, wilderness country, or private land issues where it's tougher to find accessible public land. But more often than not, it's the quality of the deer that unit could produce. So I don't like to build up more than 4 or 5 points personally. I don't want more points than that because I don't feel like it gets you anything that much better. I would rather hunt more often in a low point unit, learning it, trying to figure out where the big bucks hide out rather than waiting 10 or 15 years to do it once. It's not worth it.
Yeah, cool. What's the next state after Colorado?
And it's definitely got to be Montana. And part of that is Montana has the biggest, longest season dates out of any state. So when you are hunting just deer, right, a lot of these seasons overlap with elk. But if you just look at deer, you can start hunting the first week of September all the way through the third week of October for archery. And then after that, it'll turn to a rifle tag, the same tag, opens rifle the end of October through mid-November, which will encompass the rut. I don't know how they still have any deer left. I mean, it's amazing that you can hunt an animal for 10 weeks and still have anything. The only reason deer survive and elk is because of private land. So on these public land hunting areas, it would be 100% kill if, everybody had weeks and weeks to hunt. The reason it's not, and they continue to do this, is because there's places for the deer to get away. They can go to safe zones on private land. They can go into wilderness that's tough to access, or into a national park where there's no hunting. And that's why we still have animals there, because that is an enormous season to be able to hunt. When you contrast it to a state like New Mexico that has 5-day seasons, 5 days is short. If you don't kill one in 5 days, oh well. But if they give you 5 weeks, if you don't kill one, it's because you didn't like what you saw or you didn't go.
Yeah. Or didn't try hard enough. Didn't find the monster you were looking for. Is there more? I guess it's still the same where big fellas can pop up anywhere, but is there more opportunity, like I guess public land wise, in Montana or Colorado? Like if you were just wanting to go over and have a heap of public land to go and hunt, would you, and like wanted to find like a mature, reasonable buck, would you be looking more towards Colorado or Montana?
Personally, I would say Colorado. What happens in Montana with the general license, you have more flexibility where you can hunt all the general units that are open for general deer hunting. So you could kind of pick and choose your location based on weather or what style you wanted to hunt. So you got way more flexibility in Montana. But if I said I want a chance at a better quality deer and know that I'm going to find it, I pick a unit, I get the tag in Colorado. That would probably be my choice at this time. But the Montana is nice. Like we talked about before, you can have an elk and deer combo license and hunt both. Seasons overlap, a lot of them. And you can get this tag in Montana, the general deer license, every year or every other year as you play the general deer draw. So plan a year in advance or 2 years at the most, and you can go.
Yeah, perfect. And what with the tags, like if you were to buy or get one of these tags, I should ask this for Colorado as well. Is that can you shoot a doe and a doe or a buck, or a forky, or is it like what's the guidelines around that? Like, is it like only a branch antlered or a forky buck, or can you you get to the last day and you want to get some meat for someone? Can you shoot a doe if you haven't seen the buck you're looking for?
Yeah, most states discourage doe hunting for mule deer completely, just where numbers are at. So very few opportunities to shoot a doe deer anywhere with bow or rifle. As far as size of bucks, it depends on the state and the unit. Some units are forked antlered deer, meaning it must have a fork and be a 2-point on at least one side. Some states like Arizona say any antler that's coming out of the head makes it a buck. So you just have to check the states. Utah's got to be over 6 inches long on one side to be considered a buck. So most of the time you can downgrade and shoot any buck, but you can't downgrade to a doe. That's discouraged in most management styles.
Whether it's hunting, fishing, hiking, or any other activity in the great outdoors, Dog and Gun Coffee is ready to fuel your adventures. Their preloaded drip filters are a game changer and help you enjoy cafe quality coffee in the wild. Their dark roast, the Samba blend, is my personal favourite. The legends over at Dog and Gun Coffee have extended their support to you to help us discover your brew of choice today. Use code TWIN10, that's numerical number 10 at checkout for $10 off your first order.
Who's up next on the state list?
Well, I would put Idaho. Idaho's just down from Montana, and it's got everything from very nasty wilderness type country, big mountains, out to cornfields with deer jumping out of private land, headed up onto public sagebrush flats. So it has a little bit of everything. And now Idaho is a full draw for general tags. So what you have to do there is pick the unit or units you're willing to hunt as a non-resident and apply in a draw by December 15th for the general tags. And you can pick 5 choices. It's really easy. There's like 80 units in Idaho, so you can find 5 to put on your application that you're willing to hunt. And when you draw that tag for a unit, you have to stay in that unit, but you can hunt all available seasons there. So you can hunt the bow season, August and September. You can hunt the rifle season, which is mid-October. You can plan as many trips as you want, but you get to hunt that entire unit. So I like Idaho because it's so variable. It's a lot like Colorado. You can pick the style of hunt you want, and that determines the unit. Overall, their numbers are down just from winter kill. Heavy snow makes it tough to have a ton of deer, not like there used to be, but it's still a great hunt. Success rate should be very high on any hunt in Idaho if you're willing to shoot, an average sized deer.
Yeah, cool. And that's just obviously they've changed from the raffle style to the actual proper draw this year. But is this something where, if people got in touch with you before December and were applying, they could be going well and truly on a mule deer hunt in Idaho next year if you were helping them pick a unit and all the rest of it?
For sure. Yep. There's no reason out of your 5 choices for units, there's no reason you shouldn't get one of them if you put an easier to draw unit as your 5th choice.
Perfect. I'll book in a consult after this. No, I just for next year's I'll be applying in Montana again, but I've got I think I might go to Colorado and I've got 5 points over there. We were going to go and actually do it this year, but I have a wedding just before the season, and after talking to Eric, he was saying that the bucks, I can't remember what unit, but he wants me there the first 6 or 7 days or last couple of days of August, first days of September before they migrate, to get the best chance. And he said, there is really good bucks. You've just got to. So we're going to go early and scout, and then obviously the season starts. So, but I just couldn't do it this year, so it looks like it's going to be next year. But it seems like there's some good opportunities in Idaho, especially for if you wanted to do maybe a deer and an elk. For someone listening, seems like there might be a spot there for you as well. What are they? I mean, I know I'm harping on about it, but like you mentioned, success rates with the bow is this places where we're going to be seeing, half decent, just say 3x3s or 4x4s, sort of a couple of times, like just say if you were there for a week and had a bit of guidance from someone on the ground, or maybe one of the Huntin Fool consultants telling you, maybe go into this little crevice here. We've had hunters have success before. Are you still expecting to be seeing deer and having opportunities sort of every other day? Or is it something where you're going to be working pretty hard to try and find a buck to have a stalk on?
I'd say most of these times, if you've never hunted mule deer before, I would set the bar at shooting a mature deer or a 4-point, 4x4 would be kind of my minimum threshold. And I don't see why you couldn't find that on any of these hunts. I mean, we get into a trophy game trying to find the biggest deer, the heaviest bucks, and it just takes age to grow these deer, and that's not how they're managed. Most states are managing deer for opportunity, for more people to get to go out and experience it. And so in order for a buck to get to a trophy class, he just has to slip through the cracks, we call it. He has to get away from hunters, and he has to survive one more year. Because once a buck is 5 or 6 years old, he's going to show his, what he is. He's not going to get any bigger after that necessarily. We just need him to survive a couple years. And most states and units have great genetics. They'll grow a big deer. It's just half the hunters are willing to shoot a 2-year-old, a forky horn. So if they shoot all those, there's no bigger ones to survive to the next year. It's not that the unit can't produce it, right? There's a lot of units in elk, like Idaho really struggles to grow big elk in most units. And that's more of a product of genetics and feed and how long the winter is, not so much age. Where with mule deer, you've got to let them get some age to show what they are. And we just like to use it as our opportunity species, meaning everybody gets to go, everybody gets a tag. And that's why we shoot so many small deer.
And so for a buck to get to that 3x3, 4x4, are you really looking at something that's only like a 3 or 4-year-old buck typically?
Yeah. 3 or 4 years old, he should be a 4-point on each side.
That will do me. So I guess would you go into Utah and talk about that one next then after what you said, or is there others?
Yeah, I would go to Utah or Wyoming. Wyoming, it doesn't look great now because the western portion of Wyoming is usually what we talk about for big mule deer. And they had some really, really bad winters that in some areas it killed 100% of the fawns and 80% of adult deer. They just died with bad snow. But that population's already coming back. That was 2.5 years ago, and they're already coming back, and we're seeing the deer that survived were very healthy, very good, genetically superior deer. So the herd's coming back. I wouldn't go right away to Wyoming. Like I have points there built up for deer, and I'm going to wait a couple more years. I want all those 2-year-old deer that were born to be, say, 4 or 5 years old. Then I would like to find myself there. And the way they do their tags is you want the general season tag for region G or region H, which is the western portion of the state. Plenty of public land to hunt. Right now, it takes between 5 and 8 points to draw that. So 5 or 8 years of waiting. I would just plan ahead. If a big deer hunt, really neat country is on your list, I would start buying points in Wyoming. Everybody listening to this.
I think I've got about 4, so that should be perfect for me getting a tag in about 4 or 5 years, I reckon.
Perfect.
Sounds like we're on the right page there.
Yeah.
And is that sort of, I guess it's probably similarly where it's got all different terrains and habitats from sage flats to the big sort of pines and high elevation stuff.
One thing nice about that western Wyoming hunt is they let you hunt the first couple weeks of September with a bow, and then September 15th, mid-September is when they open the rifle seasons. If you go back to what I said about velvet and when they go hard-horned, that's going to happen right about then, mid-September. So oftentimes you can still catch the bucks at high elevation before they drop into the thick pine trees. They've just shed their velvet or just barely, maybe the velvet's still hanging off their antlers. But as they're in their summer patterns, you can still glass them and they're visible. So those hunts are really attractive because you can hunt at high elevation like it's a bow hunt, but you can use a rifle in mid-September. And that's kind of a unique opportunity because usually rifle hunts are in October.
Yeah, cool. Just a little sneak peek for any of the rifle guys listening that want to get in and get a buck with some velvet hanging off him.
Is it like, I guess there wouldn't be many? Is there many muzzleloader hunts? We're talking a lot about. Not that I think many of our listeners are muzzleloader, but is there muzzleloader seasons for mule deer as well?
Yeah, some states have them. Just depends on what the restrictions are on the muzzleloader. They've gotten more restricted, like here in Utah. Colorado has restrictions on muzzleloaders, but if you're looking to come over, I would only choose the muzzleloader hunt if it fits better with your season dates. Right? Chance at a big buck or seeing a big buck is very high on bow seasons, archery seasons, but obviously it's difficult to kill them with a bow. Muzzleloader kind of falls on the in-between transition period. Most states are like late September for a muzzleloader hunt or a late rut hunt. So I would look at those opportunities, but I would more so hunt the dates that you want more than the weapon.
By the sounds of it, with these, with the mule deer, like you said, you can if someone was listening to this and wanted to go and like their dream was to hunt a mule deer, there is no excuse for you not going next year and doing a hunt somewhere or a couple of hunts by the sounds of it for mule deer. And like if you put in the time, like what you said, there's big bucks in every unit. It's more of just finding them. And so I think, if you're out there and interested in chasing mule deer, and especially if you're fit and keen to get off the roads and get away a little bit, maybe get into some high elevation stuff, you're going to see big bucks and you're going to have opportunities. It's just how good you can capitalize. But if you've always wanted to hunt a mule deer, it sounds like you need to get over there and do it.
Yeah, no reason not to. Utah is my next state, and it's just in Utah this year alone, we gave out almost 90,000 mule deer permits, right? And now most of those go to residents, but that just shows you the sheer number of permits in this state alone. And most of that is because we have some trophy deer units that are limited draw, but most of the areas here in Utah are general season hunts. So they're managed for a lower buck to doe ratio. They're not managed for trophies. But you can still have a great hunt, and you can still go out and find a deer. There's no reason not to come to Utah, plan a vacation out of it, come see the sights, and get a general deer tag, which takes anywhere from 0 to 6 points. Most hunts can be drawn with 2 or 3 years of waiting, of building points, and come to Utah and see what it's all about. You can kill a big deer anywhere in Utah, but on general season hunts, the easier to draw tags, most of the deer are 2-year-olds. Sometimes you can slip through and find a 3 or 4-year-old buck. My wife last year ended up shooting a 7-year-old buck. We had never seen him before. He lives on public land next to everybody else. I don't know how he slipped through, but he didn't get killed in years past, and we found him and killed him on the general hunt. So it can happen.
Was he like a pretty impressive deer?
Yeah, I mean he was a nice deer. He was a 4 on one side and a big 3 on the other side with big eye guards. He was a very mature buck with a big frame, but he'd be about that 170-inch mark, which for a general season deer is a very respectable deer. Usually when you get a nice 4-point frame, you're looking at like 130 to 140-inch deer. It's a great representation of the species, and all these states I'm talking about are more than capable of producing that.
One thing I did think about as well is what, in terms of pricing, because there is a bit of an outlay, a bit more investment. You're not sort of just driving across state lines to your neighbouring state or something like that to go and hunt deer. We've obviously got to book rental cars and stuff, and we're going to do a breakdown. But what are you looking at in most of these states, even in US dollars, for one of these tags roughly?
Yeah, most deer tags with the licenses and the stamps and everything you have to buy will be between $400 and $700. It's kind of the usual range for just the deer tag and license.
Yeah. No, cool. So I mean, 700 to a.
It's usually about half of what an elk license is.
So I was going to say about 700 to 1,000 Australian dollars, which if you've always had the dream of going and chasing one of these mule deer, if you got 2 tags in 2 neighbouring states and rented a car for a couple of weeks, planned on living out of a tent, it's not that expensive of a hunt. Just don't go out on the weekends and get pissed and spend money at the pub, and you should be able to get to Utah and Idaho or something well and truly by next September.
There you go. A lot of hunters, James, will plan maybe 2 deer hunts in the same year rather than coming all the way over here just for one short deer hunt. You look at the season dates and maybe do a Colorado hunt and a Utah hunt, or, pick 2 states, Idaho and Utah. A lot of times the season dates are very close together, very similar. So then you could make your time even more worth it and see 2 different areas and 2 different experiences on the same trip. That's very common.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess similarly to elk, like you guys, I guess as part of the service for Huntin Fool, I imagine a lot of the guys in Australia and potentially New Zealand or abroad aren't that educated in terms of I don't know, is there spots and places that you guys, if I came to you and said, hey, I'm happy to walk back 3 to 5 miles and try and go and find a half mature mule deer in public land, is there spots in each of these states that you guys can be sending people to go and check out and do some scouting for you? Or
For sure. There's plenty of ways we can line the person out. And that's what's neat about mule deer is you can hunt really good country, really good mountains, and you might not get lucky and might not find a big one. But it doesn't take as much country to grow a big mule deer, meaning like an elk may have a 10-mile square radius where he lives. And so he covers a lot of ground. A lot of people see this elk, but a mule deer lives much smaller. He may live his whole life in 2 or 3 little canyons. And so it's easy for him to stay hidden. And that's what makes it so rewarding when you can find those areas and you could turn up a good buck just about anywhere.
Option Archery makes specialist hunting gear. I'll never not be able to use Equivalizer again. They're truly one of my favourite bits of kit. It combines a stabilizer and equivalizer to increase the functionality of my hunting strategy. It enables me to put my bow on my shoulders, which enables me to glass more when I'm out in the field. Shop both equivalizers and their option sight range today by heading to the website.
And I guess a bit with hunt tactics, just say I'm stalking this big mule deer that I found. He's a giant in this little canyon, and I've got big old clumsy feet, and stumble, and he hears me and busts out of there. What's the chance, from your experience, that I'm going to find him again? If I sat there for another week or moved around a bit, am I going to find him, or is he moving to a new district, sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question, but often people will say there's nothing smarter than an old mature mule deer. I don't know if that's true, biologically, but they do sure seem to be smart. They can figure things out. They figure out where they're safe. They'll lay down on the ground, put their head down, and watch you walk by. I mean, they've adapted well to live in their environments, but they are creatures of habit, and they should return. And it's not uncommon to find a buck that you busted out of an area a couple days later. So that's not impossible at all. Just kind of depends on the age of the deer and how pressured he is.
Hopefully I don't stumble then in the final moments this year, and I can just get it done. Is there any other states that have good opportunities for someone that sort of at the entry level that wanted to go and do a hunt for some mule deer, or is it now? Is it more get a bit more difficult with sort of Arizona and Nevada and those type of things?
Yeah, the only reason I would speak about Arizona and Nevada, like you said, is for archery or bow and arrow opportunities. If you are only an archery hunter, Arizona is probably your best opportunity right now. As far as a true over-the-counter hunt, you can buy an over-the-counter tag in November when they go on sale. They will sell out, but it's first come, first serve. If you buy a tag, you can hunt 90% of the units in the state, and you can hunt them early season. You can hunt them during the rut. There's a lot of flexibility there, but it's archery only. And that's mule deer or Coues whitetail deer. There are other species they have in Arizona, but there's no reason to not do that hunt. It's one of my favorite hunts personally, to chase deer. Archery is Arizona. You don't have to build points or wait in the draw. So that's a good hunt you can piece in if you're archery only. And same goes for Nevada. There are a lot of permits in Nevada that are very easy to draw if you're a bow and arrow hunter. Rifle hunts get more difficult, but Nevada doesn't have huge deer numbers or deer population, but they have a lot of units you can hunt with pretty easy to get tags for archery.
I guess just trying to maximize opportunity for a lot of these people when they're coming over. So by the sounds of it, with most, if people wanted to do, just say, an elk hunt in a lot of these states, there's really no excuse for them not having a deer or a mule deer tag in their pocket in that state as well, to just maximize the trip over there, by the sounds of it. With some good consultancy and a bit of guidance, a lot of these states like Colorado, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, where we spoke about on the last podcast about hunting elk. Well, yeah, it sounds like when you're in those states, you definitely should be either looking at neighboring states for deer access or have a tag in your pocket as well.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities that just depend on your schedule when you're going to come over. But if you can spend, 10 days or 2 weeks and come over and bounce around, then you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, going to one state where the weather might be bad or something may get screwed up. Why not go hunt in 2 or 3 different states and learn how deer react in different areas? That's what I would do.
Yeah, perfect. Is there any more fairly, I guess if someone said I wanted to, more access and opportunity states, or does it now go into more of the sort of more limited entry and if I said, hey, I just want to come over and try and shoot a big one with a bow or a rifle, we've obviously harped on now about how you can find big deer in any unit and you should go and just hunt, and you're just as likely to try and find a big one. But is there any states that, even including Mexico, I guess, that are renowned for big mule deer that it could be worth accumulating some points in? Or if someone wanted to just go and spend some money and buy a tag to go and shoot a big mule deer, what states would you be recommending? And I'm sure you guys even have outfitters lined up through Huntin Fool's consultancy, but there's probably a lot there. What states would you be accumulating points in if you wanted to get a big mule deer?
Yeah, the states with the biggest deer are the ones I've already mentioned. So if you're not going to hunt in those states right away, you could still build points there. Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, those have really big deer, and those are the states I would be playing in, like we've already talked about. But when you look at other states that have mule deer, like Washington, Oregon, California, those are just not high recommendations on my list, not for what most of you would be looking at coming over to do. So focus on the states I mentioned. If you don't want to play in the draw or wait multiple years, you can always book a guided hunt. Like we said, there's landowner vouchers you can buy where you don't have to draw. And some of these states you can just buy the tag and go, as long as you're with an outfitter. Like Mexico has some really big mule deer in northern Mexico in the state of Sonora. But Mexico mule deer hunts are $15,000 US and more to go hunt those deer. So if that's in your budget and you kind of want a one and done type hunt, just go over, do it once and shoot a big one. Mexico is a great way. Colorado private land is a great way. All the other trophy type opportunities that exist in Arizona in the draw, those are once in a lifetime, maybe once in 5 lifetimes. There's no guarantee to ever draw those really trophy deer hunts.
Those high-end tags in places like Arizona, what what, like, in a whole unit, for example, like how many tags are they giving out to the rifle and archery? Like, are we talking about like bighorn spec where it's like one tag for a whole unit, or because I imagine like you're talking about the highest age pool there, which wouldn't be a lot of animals in these units.
Yeah, that's it, I guess to put it in an example. So in Utah, we have a unit that is called the Ponsagont unit, and they'll give about 100 buck tags on an entire unit. Very difficult to draw the tag, but they kill some great bucks. And that's all weapons, 100 tags. If you go to the unit right next door, which is about the same size of unit, similar habitat, we'll give 3,000 permits on that same size of unit. So it's not near as limited as like a sheep or a moose tag where you have 1 or 2 permits, but 100 is still a very low number of permits considering the tens of thousands of people trying to get those permits. Still very limited, but not like sheep.
If you, is there a bit of a hunt strategy? I know if I had a unit that was arguably one of the best in the state, and there was a unit that was a bit easier to draw, right next door, are you hearing about people hunting like right on the unit line to try and get some spillover? Is that a tactic that people use, or is that just something that I was thinking about in my head?
No, of course it is. Some of your biggest deer and elk in the States will come from an area that's very close to where there's no hunting, like a national park or a refuge or private land where there's no hunting happening. I mean, you always have to hunt that border country. Anywhere I look, I always look at what's next door. Do they hunt it the same? Is there spillover from that side? Is there sanctuary? Yes, some guys will look at a map and say, I want to go to the middle of this unit, the very middle where there's no roads and it's wilderness and get away from everybody. That's great, but that might not be where the deer are. I'm looking for agriculture fields, alfalfa, things that attract animals. And then I will like to hunt the fringes or hunt the outside of that, where there might be some spillover of the best animals, and those that aren't capable of reading their maps and using their GPS may avoid that area.
Yeah, no, cool. I guess with the landowner, I forgot the correct name for it, but
vouchers.
The vouchers. Sorry, with Colorado, do you often get is that often accompanied with, because you're buying it from a private landowner? Is that often accompanied with getting access to that private bit of parcel of land, or is it normally just the tag and then sort of go in your own way and hunt?
Most of the time, you're just buying the tag. So they'll give you access to their land, but there may not be any deer on their land. So you may not want to hunt there at all. So usually it doesn't come with a guided hunt or access unless they give it to an outfitter who sells it as a guided package. If you just buy the landowner voucher, you just got the tag and that's about it.
Yeah, cool. And if you wanted to go with an outfitter, are those sort of hunts similarly priced to the to the elk ones, where it's, if you want deer and if you want horses and canvas wall tents and all the rest of it, you're looking at sort of 10 grand US and up, or is it a bit cheaper for a deer because there's more opportunity, and what does it sort of look like there?
Yeah, it's usually a little cheaper, but it's kind of based off accommodations. Like we talked about with elk, you can spend 6,000 US on a guided hunt for deer, or you can spend 10,000 and everywhere in between. Depends on how many days, but very similar to elk overall.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess it wouldn't be right of me not to ask, is there any other states, before we wrap up and I get you to share your best mule deer or most proud mule deer story, is there any other states that are worth mentioning for opportunity or trophy potential? Maybe, I don't know, Canada or New Mexico or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, New Mexico has some good deer opportunities, but overall, I would not go to New Mexico over these other states that we talked about. Overall, smaller deer tougher deer hunts. So I think we covered them pretty good. Going to Canada to hunt, you have to go guided. Up there, you can't hunt on your own, so you must buy a guided hunt. Very similar pricing to Mexico. The deer aren't that Sonora, wide frame, skinny body type mule deer. They're typically thicker bodies, heavier antlers in Canada, but just different looking. They're more of a Rocky Mountain mule deer than they are a desert mule deer the further north you go. But you got to go guided if you're gonna jump into some of those opportunities.
And what's your? It doesn't necessarily have to be your biggest mule deer. What's your most memorable mule deer hunt?
Probably with my wife and kids. So my wife did not grow up hunting, and so I've just barely got her shooting a bow and arrow last couple of years. So when she was starting to hunt deer, I wanted her to hunt no matter what, and she was pregnant because I have a lot of children, so my wife was pregnant a lot, and I would always take her deer hunting, and she seemed to always be pregnant during hunting season. But one time we hunted a new general unit here in Utah that we had never set foot in before. This is a couple years ago, and never been there, scouted it on the map, and just said, I want to be close to the mountains, but I want to be near some agriculture farmers' fields because I know deer love to come down and eat the good stuff. But as they transition back to their bedding areas, they're going to go on public land. So we drove in the dark to this area and just said, let's just glass. She was very pregnant, 7 months pregnant, did not want to leave the truck very far. And we just said, we'll just glass from here and see what happens. And sure enough, as soon as the sun came up, we see these lines of deer, does and fawns, and some little bucks coming out of the fields, heading up into the mountains to lay down for the day. And I caught a glimpse of a deer that just kind of shocked me. We were expecting to maybe shoot a 4-point, and this big 5x5 comes out of the field, jumps the fence, and just starts walking up the hill. And she doesn't really get excited like I do, right? Lady hunters are always more calm, more collected, more methodical, and I'm freaking out. Like, we got to kill this deer right now. And luckily, I had practiced with the gun with her quite a bit, and we found a rock that she could straddle and lay down on with her belly and got her as comfortable as could be. But she made a great shot. Women are always better shots than men, but she made a great shot and killed this deer at 850 yards, one shot with the rifle. And I was more excited than anything, but it was a sweet memory, just to get to hunt with my wife, sleep in a tent, and go into a new area totally blind, and ended up shooting a really nice buck. So that was a good memory for me, and I hope to keep making those memories with my kids.
Sounds like your wife's a bit of a badass, to be honest, with all these shared hunting stories. Sounds like she gets all the big mature mule deer. She might be a good luck charm.
She definitely is. I know it's not me. It's definitely got to be her.
With unmatched quality, performance and reputation, Aimrite International is our go-to for spear guns, wetsuits and fins. Whether it be coral trout, wahoo or dogtooth tuna, Aimrite has you covered on or in the water. Check them out today at their website.
No, that's awesome. Is that a tactic that you use commonly with like elk and other, like transitioning now into whitetail, where you're commonly across the west looking at hunting like that ag up into mountain sort of country, like rather than diving 10 miles back deep into the back country? Like, are you normally targeting those ag up into public land sort of? Is that your style of hunting?
I love hunting the mountains, and I love hunting wilderness. I just always try to think outside of the box. If I was a deer and every day I was chased by a mountain lion and I had nothing to eat and I'm tired of people, where am I going to go? And sometimes that is the deep wilderness canyon where you need to go. And sometimes it's right behind town, right? Up in the little draws right behind the grocery store. So it totally depends on the area, but I always look at, like you said, the outsides, the limits, the fringe areas, neighboring other units, where might hunters forget to look, and that's where I know a deer may slip through and get a little bigger. I'm not just looking for deer numbers, because that's where all the little bucks and all the does are going to be. I want to look for an area that's maybe overlooked or a little more creative in the hopes of finding a bigger buck.
And I know that elk can travel quite a long way. Like it's scary sometimes how far they can go off a ag crop up into the mountains and then come back down and feed. What sort of range? Like, are you typically looking at that sort of mile, 2 miles off? Or not even, maybe a mile for deer, or what's like off on the hills surrounding for mule deer, or is it they can travel a fair way for feed as well?
They can travel to feed, but I see mule deer move much further for migration. Like we have documented deer moving 50, 60, 70 miles for a migration pattern once a year. But for daily feeding, they're generally a lot smaller circle for where they want to lay down. And they can hide out in the open behind a small bush, and be in the shade. They're a smaller animal. They're not a herd animal. They're fine laying down by themselves all day. And so oftentimes I'll see them travel just a few hundred yards and not go very far. When we see elk walk 5 or 6 miles every morning and every evening, I've never seen deer do that.
Yeah, perfect. Was there any, before we shifted gears to whitetail, was there any other final thoughts or notes, tips or tactics that you wanted to share with the listeners about mule deer?
No, I think it's a good species just to look at. And if you see somebody with a big mule deer, he may have just gotten lucky. It's not that he had more points or he applied in more states. The best deer hunters are the ones that hunt the most often. And some really big deer come from surprising units and surprising places, but they're usually taken by those that are willing to go and be out there and be more often in the field. So that's what I try to do, is get on. Of course, I live here, but 2 or 3 mule deer hunts a year is typically my goal. And someday I hope to shoot a really big one, but not yet.
What's a really big one to you?
I'd really like to break the 200-inch mark, and shoot I've got a couple bucks in the 190 type buck range. They come from general units, easy to draw, but a 200-inch mule deer is kind of a lifetime goal of mine. But I've probably shot 35 or 40 mule deer so far in my life, and I just, someday I'll kill a big one, but I always shoot the good ones when I see them, so then I don't get a chance to hunt the big ones.
So jumping into whitetail now, what sort of habits, I guess, they are a little bit different from mule deer in the sense of they're obviously in the Midwest, but they sort of do go down into the deep South, where we see very different hunting styles from, the Midwest is a lot of spot and stalk and, big open country and that type of thing, all the way into the thick pine forests and big mountains. And then the deep South, a lot more flat country where people are hunting them on, corn crops and out of tree stands and that type of thing. What's your experience with people coming over? Do they sort of want the, and I guess pairing that with opportunity and access, do people want more of the big mountainous whitetail or more of the cornfield, alfalfa plot sort of style of hunting?
Yeah, it's a totally different deer. And the majority of what I see is it's based on the type of land and who owns the land and how huntable is it. A whitetail deer lives in a much smaller circle, so he doesn't travel as much except during the rut, and everything is based around feed and cover. So a whitetail deer, where I grew up here in the western states, we have whitetails. And like you said, they may be more in the mountains. But my first whitetail deer I shot in a river bottom, right, in Idaho, where he's surrounded by mule deer in the hills, but the whitetails are down low in the river bottoms. That's common in some of these western states. Mule deer mountains, whitetail in the bottoms. I like that style of hunting. It's different for us because I didn't grow up in the Midwest where everything's about tree stands and, ag fields and plots and planting corn and clovers. Like, I don't know much about that. I'm not a farmer and I don't own land. So if you're looking at public land whitetails, yeah, the western states, North Idaho is probably one of your best opportunities. Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, great opportunities. Montana is one of the top opportunities because there's whitetails that intermix with mule deer country. The whitetails will live sometimes in the mountains, sometimes in the rivers, and sometimes just out on the plains in eastern Montana. And when you have that general deer tag in Montana, you can shoot a mule deer or a whitetail, depending on those units. So that's where I say a lot of people will choose to take a whitetail. When you go to Wyoming or Colorado, I wouldn't be looking at whitetail hunts in those two states. I would be looking more at mule deer hunts in those. And then as you go further east from the western states, you lose public land really fast. You lose accessible land. Some of those states just do not have public land. It's crazy because we're so used to the western states just being able to go anywhere on Forest Service or BLM or state land. And that is not the same once you get to the Midwest and the eastern areas. So you look at a state like Texas, huge population of whitetail deer. But there's just so much private land. If you don't own the land, I don't know what you're going to do. You can't really hunt. So, Texas, for example, I think is 90% or 92% private. That leaves very little of the state that you can hunt on. And they've got an enormous whitetail population. But so much of consulting hunters on whitetail hunting comes down to your budget. Are you willing to pay for access to go on private land? And what kind of private land do you want to hunt? If a property produces big deer, it's going to cost more. Smaller deer costs a lot less. And it doesn't have to be a big property because the circle a whitetail lives in is so small. You may be able to hunt on 500 acres and have a phenomenal whitetail deer hunt if it's the right 500 acres, the correct piece of land. So totally different mindset from Western hunting to say, I want to chase whitetails. What I tell most people, whitetail hunts are still reasonably priced, and there's no reason to not book a guided hunt and just pay for access to a good ranch, where you can hunt on your own, but you maybe stay in their lodge, use their tree stands, and hunt on your own.
So with, and you may have mentioned it because I was just looking at a map trying to work out particular states. I guess first thing, so if people wanted to shoot like a big whitetail, are they just as likely to do it, in the West as they are in some of these eastern states, or is it more likely that you're going to shoot it on, on a clover field somewhere?
That's a good question. I mean, very few big deer will come from the western states. Most of your best genetics for big whitetails are going to come from what we call the Midwest. And so that would be Wisconsin, Ohio, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa. Those states right down the middle part of the U.S. are going to be your best for big deer. And that's a combination of feed, genetics, and not having really bad winters. So the deer that as you go further east into the deep south, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, tons of deer. I mean, many of those areas you can shoot 4 or 5 deer a year there, but they're going to be smaller. They're not managed for trophies. They don't have the amount of food plots and resources they need to grow big, and they just shoot smaller deer overall. But your best genetics are right there in the middle part of the U.S.
Those states that are further east, do you think it's a genetic thing, or do you think it's a fact that they just don't get old enough and deer are getting it shot at 2, 3, 4 rather than 4, 5, 6?
I think it's both. honestly. There's some good size ranches, where a person will own 1,000 acres or 5,000 acres in the Midwest. And over the last, say 50 to 100 years, they've been able to manage their programs better, and they shoot management bucks, and they provide the feed they need. And so I think it turns into a little bit of selective genetics, where they've been able to manage to the deer that they want, and not just when you go east, you get really small tracts of private land where a deer jumps one fence, two fences, and then boom, he's shot as a spike as a 1-year-old. And what are you ever going to do there? It's probably a combination of both genetics and feed. But I think they've just been able to manage better in that Midwestern portion. And you have a little bit worse winters as well, which generally means bigger bodies, healthier deer, and not so much the humidity year round as the Deep South.
I'm just taking a short ad break here to look at a photo that you just emailed me of your wife and her mule deer. And that thing is a giant. If I shot that mule deer, I would be, oh, mate, look at it. It's so heavy too. Like, you can tell it's an old deer, but that thing is huge. I'm not going to share it with the listeners, but yeah, if you
pretty lucky.
Yeah, put in the time, guys. That's all I can say. That thing's massive. For me, if I shot something like that in my life, I'd be, a happy bow hunter, and that's someone that would like to go to the US every year. So it just shows what you can accomplish. Like, and if you get lucky and put in the time on public land, like there's obviously plenty of opportunities. It's got blades almost.
Yeah,
it's heavy.
It's really, really heavy.
Yeah, wow. So I guess then going back to the whitetail, like with opportunity, is there, you mentioned Montana, do you want to start more with the Western stuff? Is there still fairly good opportunities there, to get a tag every year, sort of like mule deer, or is it fairly competitive just with how popular whitetail hunting is?
No, in the Western states that have huntable populations of whitetail deer, most of those are just managed as a general season, so pretty easy to get the permit. Whitetail tags are the easiest to get for sure. Now, I'm not talking about the variety, the subspecies, like a Coues whitetail in Arizona or New Mexico would be more difficult to get, but that's not your traditional, or what we would call an Eastern whitetail. Oregon also has Columbia whitetail deer, different subspecies, but just the regular Eastern whitetail. Idaho, you can hunt them, and that's just with a general unit tag. Montana, you can hunt them in the eastern part of the state with your general tag. Wyoming, I don't recommend that. Yes, you can hunt them in the eastern part of the state, but if I'm building Wyoming deer points, I want to hunt mule deer there. I would go elsewhere for whitetail. Then as you push a little further east, Huntin Fool, we help people apply in states where there's big whitetail. So we help people in Kansas and Iowa because that is a draw system there. So like Iowa's been on my list for a while. I want to do a guided hunt there just to stay at a lodge, get on some good private property. I've waited my 5 years. That's what it takes to get an Iowa deer tag for a bow hunt. And so I'm going this November to Iowa to try to shoot a big deer. If I don't get one, I got to build at least 5 years worth of points and try again in 5 years. But I'm not a big whitetail hunter. I would like to kill some big ones in my life. So I'm looking at Kansas and Iowa mostly.
Born out of necessity, Day 6 designs and builds specialised equipment for hunters. Their arrows are bomb-proof and consistent. I'm currently running their 275 spine shafts. The split between the usual 250 and 300 spine shaft is perfect for the heavier broadhead that we run. Coming in at 11.8 grains per inch, this setup is perfect for all game here in Australia and beyond.
Yeah, perfect. And with those, we'll jump back into a question where you said about Wyoming applying for the deer and how it conflicts with whitetail and mule deer. But with those Iowa and those sort of tags systems, I imagine that like how long is the actual season for these hunts? It's not going to be like a week, like a New Mexico tag sort of thing. You've got a fair bit of time down there to hunt.
Right. Like in Iowa, the archery season is September 1st through December 31st. So 3-month season. Just depends on, I want to be there during the rut. So I'm going the second week of November. And that's just when I was able to secure my dates. But I secured my dates 2 years in advance with the property that I will be hunting on. So you have to plan ahead if you're going to book a guided hunt, in a Midwestern state for sure.
So that's you. So with your Hunting Fool knowledge and obviously like advisory knowledge, so you knew that given the fact, like, do you take into account like point creep and stuff like that in these states, or no? You're just like, in 2 years' time, off 5 points, I'm currently at 3. I should draw this tag, so I'm going to book this hunt in now. Is that the maths on what you did pretty well?
Yeah, there's in some of these states there is no point creep, just because the entire population of applicants that has that point level is drawing. So if it was 100% drew with 5 points, and then the next year all the 4-point holders went up to 5, and then it was 100% draw again, there's essentially no creep. It's staying at 5 points. So you wait your turn, everybody with 5 gets it. And that's kind of where those states are sitting. So I knew confidently I could get it, in 2 years' time.
And so, like, I guess if you're looking, prime rut dates, I imagine, are the most difficult to secure, like in any sort of scenario. For a decent opportunity on a 500-acre block of land in some accommodation and stuff during the rut, what sort of price range are you looking at? And I'm assuming most of these are like you get access, but they're not guided. Is that correct? Or is there a guy sitting in a tree or a blind with you?
Most of the time they just place you in a tree stand or in a blind, and then pick you up and provide you lodging and meals. But the sky's the limit on whitetail. Some people would just allow access and you do everything on your own. Some people will sit in the blind right with you, but anywhere from $4,000 to $7,000 is kind of what we're paying for guided hunts, and a lot of the size of buck you get is based on how good the property is and some element of luck. It's not everybody's going to be lucky enough to kill a big one, even on a good property. Whitetail are hard to pattern. They're very cagey, very weary. So a ranch that has a lot of trail cameras, a lot of food plots, that's typically going to be your best bet.
And is there many people that are doing spot and stalk for whitetail? Like obviously more so across the West, but even in these sort of eastern states or Midwest, is there people that are routinely doing and available for spot and stalk? Or I mean, if you only got 500 acres, it's a pretty slow spot and stalk.
Yeah.
So how does that all work? Is it mainly just blinds, or?
It seems most of the population that is a good huntable population is best going to be accessed by a tree stand or a blind. Spot and stalk, like you said, if you're on a small piece of property, you can only go in circles so many times looking for that animal. So we don't see that as much on private land. I wouldn't say spot and stalk is very common. On public lands, like say you went to northern Idaho to hunt whitetail, a lot of that country is open to hunting, and it's logging timber country where they have clear cuts. They're doing logging operations, and you can drive around and you can spot and stalk. You can long range rifle hunt those. But that's going to be more difficult as you get into the Midwest and you get onto these smaller properties. Like some states don't even allow rifle hunting, not high-powered rifle. They're archery and muzzleloader only, or short-range shotguns only. So you're going to be hunting around homes and towns when you go to the Midwest and further east, whereas the Western stuff, spot and stalk, could happen because it's more public land.
And you mentioned before with Wyoming how there was, like, in building up points, there was a conflict between when you're building up for deer. When you're applying, you can either pick whether you're applying for whitetail, whether you're applying for mule deer. Can you first explain that a bit better than what I did so that people can actually understand it? And secondly, also just lead into if there are any other states that have that sort of system?
Sure. Yeah, there's depending on the unit in Wyoming. So when you draw a general season tag, oftentimes they'll allow you to shoot a whitetail or a mule deer. I'm just saying the focus should never be on whitetail in those units. I would use your money and your points to apply for a mule deer hunt in that state. I would not put their whitetail opportunities above their mule deer opportunities at all. That's why I would say only apply for mule deer units there in Wyoming. Montana, doesn't conflict as bad because the deer tag is good in multiple units all over the state, and it could be an either or. You could be hunting one day and see mule deer and the next day see a whitetail. That's kind of a neat opportunity, but I wouldn't go to Montana just to shoot a whitetail. I would say, let's go to another state that's more whitetail central and see if you can have a chance at a better buck.
Yeah, with the Montana tag, is that because I've had the general deer tag before and seen mule deer and whitetail on a hunt. How does that work? Because that obviously is the rifle tag as well a general deer tag where it's mule deer or whitetail, or how does that work the same?
It is. It's the same tag. Just depends on the unit. So when you have that general tag, you can bounce all over the state. You just have to decide which one is going to be the best for you. And if it's open on the regulations for the taking of a whitetail buck, then you can take a whitetail. Some units are going to be closed for whitetail or mule deer or vice versa. So that's a state where you just have to check the regulations as you hunt.
Have you personally done any spot and stalk for whitetail with the bow? Are they really as cagey and hard to do as it says?
I never have for an eastern whitetail. Now, for Coues whitetail in Arizona, I've done that quite a few times, and that's very difficult. Those Coues deer are way smaller than a normal whitetail. Very fun to hunt with a bow, but very difficult to hit. I've seen a little bird fly by, and a Coues deer turns inside out to get away from you because the bird scared him. I mean, they are scared of everything. So that species is very difficult to hunt, but I've never spot and stalked a eastern whitetail. I've always sat in a tree stand.
Yeah, cool. What with the Coues deer, I guess a bit of a bonus here for listeners. So is Arizona, because I think they've got them in Mexico as well. Where are you heading down to do a Coues deer hunt?
Yep, you can hunt them in Mexico. You must go guided and get on a ranch to hunt there. And then you can hunt them in New Mexico and Arizona on public land. I like Arizona because it's an over-the-counter bow tag, or the rifle tags are really easy to get. It's basically the whole southern half of the state, giant population. There's hundreds and hundreds of Coues whitetail running around all over southern Arizona. I like the stuff that's by, the Mexican border, right on the southern side of Arizona. Really neat country to hunt, a great species to get out and explore Arizona.
Are they more up, are they going to be in the sage flats, or are they going to be sort of more up in the arid hills, or what sort of country are you chasing them in?
Yeah, they'll be in a little bit of everything. Arizona's known for cactus, thorns, so they're in a lot of these oak flats and grassy areas, but they can live in thick manzanita pine trees all the way down to the desert floor and everything in between. So you can kind of pick your poison with Arizona Coues deer and hunt them where you like. They've adapted very well. They're just a very small desert animal, just a tiny deer, which makes them hard to see, hard to shoot.
Yeah, cool. What are the seasons? Because I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do. What are the season dates for that OTC Arizona tag?
If you get the tag in Arizona, which is over the counter, you can hunt the August season, which goes mid-August to mid-September. Very hot, very difficult that time of year. I like the December-January season, so it'll open mid-December, clear through the end of January. So that's right in the winter season, and that's pretty close to the rut. Coues deer will rut the last week of January. They're kind of behind mule deer. And it's phenomenal hunting. Lots of shot opportunities, lots of stalking opportunities. You just have to, it's over holidays, December, January. You just have to come over and do it.
I think I might probably another one to add to my personal list of talking to you about, because I think, it's with us. It's when a lot of our, like the axis deer in Australia starts up, like a lot of the North Queensland go into the wet season. So that all sort of shuts down. A lot of our southern deer species are growing out their antlers. So over that Christmas period into December, Jan is a pretty quiet period for us in Australia, I'd say, where, the weather's beautiful, but other than maybe going to New Zealand to hunt tar or chamois or something like that in the summer ranges, a bit warmer and more comfortable hunt. There's not that, like a lot of the species have sort of become inaccessible, or you're not going to be targeting them when they're growing out the velvet. So it's probably not a bad idea for maybe us to head over and check out some Coues deer in the future, because obviously Meat Eater is a great advocate for hunting and stuff, and I think our personal hunt style is a lot of that, like sit on your ass glass, find something that you want to go, and then quietly sort of position yourself and stalk in. So I think it'd be a cool different hunt to go and do. So I might be hitting you up for one of those in the future as well, I think.
Yeah, I would plan one. November 3rd is the big day to worry about there, because Arizona will sell next year's tags every year on November 3rd. So you must buy them before they sell out. They're $300. They're pretty cheap. And then you can have that tag to use the whole next calendar year. So pretty good value, and it's good for mule deer or Coues whitetail deer. Lots of public land. And it's fun. December, January in many states is snow and cold, but in Arizona, it's very moderate. No snow, pretty good climate. So it's a fun time of year to hunt on dry ground.
Yeah, perfect. And with the organizing the tags and stuff, is that something where if we spoke to our Huntin Fool hunt advisor, so for me it'd be Eric, beforehand, that you guys could line up the tag for us with, if you had our card details and that type of thing? Or is that something where we personally need to go online and organize that tag?
Usually it's best if you do it. We don't have any secret way to make sure we get it faster than you. It will always try to help you out, but the unit, there's no units. It's just a statewide tag. You just buy it. Whoever checks out the fastest gets it. So sometimes it's better if you and Aiden and me and you get a few people on trying to get it, and maybe somebody will be able to check out before they sell out. Right? Last year they sold out in about half an hour, so they sell out quickly now. But it's an opportunity that's worth trying to get it, even if you don't use it. It's a $300 tag that you had the option for.
And is it like you mentioned me, you and Aiden, for example, can you do it as a group hunt, or is it something that you, like the tag is only applicable to yourself?
Yeah, not on this, because it's not a draw. It probably will become a draw sometime soon, but right now it's just over the counter. So it's individuals go in and buy it individually, and it's your tag. And then the next person goes in and tries to buy their tag. But
yeah, perfect. No, I mean, running out of OTC opportunities, so it sounds like. And probably another one with the Idaho draw. Like, I mean, if you can line up, an Arizona mule deer or Coues deer tag in November, and then have an elk and a mule deer tag lined up in Idaho in December, I mean, you've already got the formation of a pretty nice little trip over to the US to go and hunt some awesome game species before a lot of the states even come out. And then that way, like building your hunt strategy from there, you can either have a lot of tags and spend a lot of time over there, or target which tags you go for. And there's a lot to it. It certainly is.
There is a lot. Yeah, come over and make the most of your time, though. And whether it's bird hunting or small game hunting, like there's other things you can do during any of these hunts, especially the deer seasons.
Cayuga broadheads. Where do I begin? Aiden and I have just absolutely taken to and love these broadheads. He's shooting the 150 grain Zots while I'm shooting the 150 grain pilot cuts with bleeders. There was no other head that I was going to run in Montana on my limited entry hunt than the pilot cut. And I was so happy when I took down the bull of a lifetime. We've teamed up with Cayuga to get 10% off your next order by using the code TWIN10 at checkout. That is TWIN, 10 the number at checkout to get 10% off your next order.
Yeah, how does it work with having, so I know in Montana I bought like an uplands bird license or whatever, and we were hunting chukar, is that? Mm-hmm. And grouse? No, we weren't hunting chukar, we were hunting grouse. We were hunting sharp-tail grouse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that a thing?
It is. Yeah, most of the states, when you buy those qualifying license, you may be able to hunt other species. Like in Arizona, you buy a hunting license, then you can hunt quail. They, grab a shotgun and hunt some quail. In a state like Utah, you get a hunting license, you buy a bird stamp, then you can hunt waterfowl when you're here, ducks and geese. Or you just have to check through the regulations, but oftentimes your basic hunting license, they include all this other stuff that you can hunt.
And then how does it work with like firearms licenses and that sort of thing? Like, if I go over there, do I need to get a license to be able to, if I just say I'm hunting with you and you've got a gun license, do I need to go and get like an internationally recognized license, or can I just borrow one of your shotguns and go and shoot some quail or grouse or whatever legally I can from my regulation and tags?
Well, I'm not a legal advisor here, so I'll be careful what I say. But I think we don't have firearm licenses in the States, so we don't have to have a license to own a gun, to have a gun in our possession. Shotguns, rifles, there's nothing, no licenses. We do have to go through a process when we purchase a gun, but I can purchase a gun, I can sell it for cash to the next individual, whether they have a license or not. There isn't any sort of license. So if you have a valid hunting license, that's what you would need to grab somebody's gun and head off into the field. But there's nobody that would check you to see if you could have that license, because there isn't a gun license per se. Yeah, you've got to go through customs and border protection and all of that when you come here. And I'm not familiar with bringing a rifle from Australia up to the States, what you have to do. But once you're here in the States, anybody can have that gun and use it.
Well, because I know on my first trip, I was carrying a pistol when I was out elk hunting, because I was in some very high grizzly densities. And then we actually, when I spent like that day doing bird hunting, I did mule deer in the arvo in the morning, and we had sort of a bit of bird hunting after that. They just said, you don't need a license, here's a shotgun, let's go hunting. And it was actually awesome. Like, as someone who doesn't bird hunt, and we just quickly looked up the regs, and I had all the required licenses. I think I was allowed 3 or 6 birds a day. And there was a group of us, and went out with the dogs, and it was actually an incredible experience to go out, and like, it was just you're just walking around the beautiful hills, like you're seeing deer and you're flushing birds and, seeing everything else. And it was a extremely memorable, compared to the grind and sadness and loneliness of a backcountry elk hunt. It was a beautiful contrasting change. And it was a very, very memorable day. And so, there's obviously a lot of opportunities to do things like that. If you're connected and if you've got the resource and the time and stuff like that, and I advise people too, and they tasted so good.
That's good. Yeah. There's a lot of, we don't talk about small game hunting or bird hunting enough. There's definitely some good opportunities, and I'm not an expert with that. I talk about big game, but there are a lot of opportunities out there in a lot of different states.
No, that's awesome. And I guess to wrap it up, was there anything else you wanted to add with the whitetail before we jumped into one of your favorite whitetail hunts?
I don't think so. I think we didn't give too many specifics on what state to go to, but we sell a lot of guided whitetail hunts. We arrange a lot of group hunts to go. If people have 2 or 3 or 4 people to go together and you want to hook a whitetail hunt on while you're hunting something else, like they're a lot cheaper price, very reasonable, and they can be a very fun, low energy, low stress type hunt that probably doesn't involve backpacking and sleeping on the mountain. So good species for that.
Yeah, you're still getting to go by the warm fire and have a nice meal at the lodge for lunch, and then get put out in another tree stand for the afternoon or whatever. So, you mentioned your hunts were all tree stand hunts, or maybe, I don't know. Have you got another story of your wife shooting a massive whitetail, or?
No, my wife has a Coues whitetail that I took her on that hunt. She was also very pregnant, but she made a great shot on a Coues whitetail. She has not killed a normal eastern whitetail yet. So my eastern whitetail hunt, the first one I shot was in Idaho, but it was on the river bottoms. And I didn't grow up hunting whitetail, so reading scrape lines and scratches and brush lines, trying to figure out where these whitetail move is very new to me. But my first whitetail, I found these areas where I figured whitetail were crossing in some sort of pattern, and there was a late archery season, the first part of December, and sometimes I'm a little more stubborn than I am smart, and I said, I'm just going to sit in this tree stand until this buck walks by. I didn't even know there was a buck there, but I knew there were does there, so I figured a buck had to be coming by to check. And on my second day of sitting, I'm not very good at this, so I put on all the heavy clothes that I have to stay warm because it's December in Idaho. It's around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and I just said, if I don't eat and I don't drink, then I'll never have to take a leak or leave the tree. So I just stayed in the tree from an hour before sunrise until dark. And after the second day of being in the tree, no eating, no drinking, no moving, a buck finally walked by, and I shot him at 20 yards out of a little homemade tree stand I threw up. And I was just excited because I thought, I figured this out. I figured out how to find a whitetail and shoot him. It's very out of the norm for me because I grew up mule deer hunting, so whitetail is very different. In the hardwoods, thick country, I didn't know how to rattle. I didn't know how to grunt, so I just stayed totally still, didn't move, didn't do anything for 12 hours, and I got lucky. He walked by. So that was my first whitetail.
That's an absolutely epic story. Just to put that into context for our listeners over here, 0 degrees Fahrenheit is minus 18 degrees. Cold enough. No wonder you didn't want to pee. It just turned to ice straight away as it leaves your body. That's and I think lucky that hunt ended on day 2, because if you weren't eating and drinking, like day 3, you would have been, I don't know how your body wasn't shutting down just from trying to regulate and trying to keep you warm. Like, you must have had an excessive amount of clothes on, or good clothes. Like, that's crazy.
That's funny. Very, very thick wool clothes, face mask, gloves. I mean, yeah, you're just stuck to the tree. It's very, very boring, but it gives you a good time to think and be outside.
No, perfect. And was he a good buck?
Yeah, he was what in whitetail world they count all the tines typically, so they would call him an 8-point, 4 on each side. Decent buck. It was my first buck with a bow, and then I said, I'm going to do this like a whitetail hunter does, where they gut them and then they drag them. And then you always realize quickly that dragging a deer is a joke and very, very difficult. And tried to load him up in the bed of the truck by myself. I mean, it was a true whitetail hunt, and it was way too much work.
And you haven't been back since?
Yeah. Well, I've killed some whitetails since then, but not that, anytime you do your first hunt, it's like, whoa, this is way different than what I'm used to. But I love those different experiences. And this year I'm going to Iowa to sit in a tree stand, stay at a nice lodge. There's a group of 8 of us going, and it's going to be more about the group and camp together than the hunt. But we hope to shoot some nice bucks with our bow.
Yeah, awesome. That's it. And I think that's probably going to resonate with the whitetail hunting with a lot of people. Like, it gives it's not that crazy price compared to maybe an elk hunt or and it also means that you can plan it with your mates and have some good opportunities. Talk to Huntin Fool, or something you organise for 3 to 5 years out, depending on if you do have any points at the moment, and maybe do it for a 30th, 40th, 50th or something like that, where you'll go and hunt some of these big whitetails, but you're not, you're going to be cold if it's during the rut, but you're not going to be super uncomfortable because you'll have the gear, you'll have people with the knowledge, you're going to be going back to a lodge, you're going to have good food, have a good night's sleep, you can play poker and do whatever else you guys do. But it's definitely an appealing hunt, especially some people that want that camaraderie and a bit of a team or a group hunt for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited, and it's all about the different experiences. You can find what you want.
Perfect. Well, just wrapping up this hunt, hopefully you guys have become inspired to go and chase a mule deer or maybe a coos deer or a whitetail sometime in your near future. Hopefully now you've got a bit of guidance from Austin where it might help you go and add an extra tag to an elk tag, or if you specifically wanted to chase one of these species, you can go and have a hunt for one of them in the US. Hopefully we've highlighted how easy it is to get a tag, but we do always emphasize how good the Huntin Fool service is, especially even like we mentioned, even just for finding spots. Like, by the sounds of it, most people should be able to get a tag every year for one of these deer species especially the western states. But one of the big things is just that information on where to go, when to go. Like I said, I nearly went to Colorado. I had enough points to go and do this tag. The statistics was that it was going to be a really good hunt with opportunities to shoot big deer. But Eric's like, no, if you can't go there in the first week or the first even couple of days with a couple of days of scouting, it's not worth going if you want to shoot that next level of buck. So those are sort of the different tips that you get, and just that next level of consultancy I guess you get with Huntin Fool. So like we said on the previous podcast, if you want to reach out and apply for any of these species, either go to the huntinfool.com website to the Contact Us page, or equally you can send an email to applications@huntinfool.com, and someone will get in contact with you there, one of the lovely team members, and organise you a hunting consultant. You might have Austin, or you might have one of the other awesome advisors there at Huntin Fool, and they can start your hunting strategy for years to come on deer, elk, sheep, moose, or whatever other big game species you want to target in the US. So thank you again, Austin, for giving us your time here in Australia and New Zealand and all the rest of the world where our listeners come from, and just sharing some of your knowledge and passion for targeting those big game species, and hopefully getting a few more people on these awesome adventures and hunts in the future.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having us, and check out the website, and we'll continue to help the best we can.
Perfect. Talk to you soon, mate.
Being so passionate about food and cooking, we have teamed up with Camp Chef. With portable cookware for wherever your travels take you, Camp Chef provides a better way to cook food. Whether in the backyard or the backcountry, shop pellet grills, their cast iron range, or portable cooking systems today. We personally love their large 12-inch diameter skillets and camp ovens for cooking over the coals.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but every time I talk to Austin and finish up one of these podcasts, I just think about how much I've learned and how many opportunities there are to be explored and get tags to hunt. And it's just incredible what a lot of knowledge from him, but a little bit of guidance can accomplish. And this series is even just opening my eyes to what opportunities lie in the US for next year. I do have a couple of points saved up in a couple of different states, and hopefully, I've done a lot of my hunting predominantly in Montana historically, so really looking forward to seeing next year. I think I'll be going and chasing elk and by the sounds of it, some deer in some other states. But it's just crazy to see what opportunities lie around the place. With a bit of guidance. So I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. What we're going to do now is jump into our FAQ question segments, our listener questions. If you guys have a question that you want answered on the podcast, please email at us at info@twinalements.com.au with the subject line FAQ, or send us a message on Instagram at the main Twin Elements account, or Aiden and Doomsdas Outdoors, or James Doomsdas Outdoors account, and we will answer it in a future podcast. So this question is, when is the best time to hunt mule deer or whitetail in the US? So it's a pretty broad question. I guess it depends on sort of your hunt tactics, but also I think the biggest thing is like when you actually intend on hunting in terms of weapon choice. So as Austin was saying, like there is some opportunities for rifle, what we call early season, so sort of September in some of these states, but often rifle historically is sort of during the rut and late season, so like October, November, for a lot of these tags with mule deer. Whereas the archery season, early season as they like to call it, is sort of mainly in that September period. So it really does depend on what your weapon is and when you can get tags available. So with mule deer specifically though, if you want to hunt the bucks when they're coming out of velvet in that sort of late August, early September period where he was saying they're all up high and they've got their sort of patterns and stuff like that, then that's definitely a cool time of year. Then by the sounds of it, it does get very difficult during that September into October period where they're sort of not really running yet. They're on the does, but equally you can see a buck in one spot one day and then he might be 5 miles away the next day, moving to go check out some more does as he migrates, because that's sort of the difficulty, I guess. Like there's nothing holding them there, whereas when they start rutting, they sort of stay in a rough area and you can sort of, they get a bit silly and you can find them on the does. And so, with mule deer, it really does depend. It sort of seems whether you want to hunt them in the rut or whether you want to hunt them early season when they're coming out of the velvet. But really the biggest factor is going to be whether you're bow or rifle and when you can get a tag. With whitetail, as you've seen from all the videos online, pretty much everyone hunts them in the rut, which is sort of November. You may go late into December. And there's plenty of tags available with a bit of planning for rifle or bow, depending on what your weapon of choice is there. So whitetail is definitely during the rut, whereas mule deer is either early season when they're coming out of velvet, which is going to be a bow hunt predominantly, or late season you could do a bow or rifle, but when they're running. So hopefully that answers your question, mate. And we get some pictures in the future of you chasing either a whitetail or a mule deer. So thanks for sending that one through, and best of luck out there, hopefully organising your deer hunt in the future. Alrighty guys, well thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast. Hopefully you've learnt plenty so far in the series. We've got a couple more episodes with Austin featuring in the future where we break down a few more species. We've got antelope next week on the chopping block, and then we actually go into moose and caribou and sheep and mountain goat. So there's plenty more to chime into. There's plenty of knowledge in these podcasts. You guys are going to be absolute experts. You'll be running masterclasses on the US big game model by the time we're done with you. So make sure to chime in on those future podcasts. But we've got a pretty open slate after that on podcast topics. There's a few that we want to do with, what gear, we're going to be using in the US. We want to do like our backpacking gear. We want to do some breakdowns of the costs of going on some of these trips, just so you guys have a bit of a plan and you can, we're not going to be talking about sheep hunts where it costs $60,000 US for a tag, but more, just the regular punter that wants to go over and do an antelope hunt or an elk hunt or a deer hunt, sort of what they're going to be faced with, and just give people a bit of an idea on budget for saving up for the next couple of years whilst you're building out your hunt strategy. So if there's any other podcast topics, equally, if there's any hunting videos that you'd love us to see on our YouTube, please let us know. We've obviously got one in the Northern Territory starting up shortly, so that will be coming through in the next couple of weeks, where every Wednesday night, the usual 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Times, a video will be dropping on the YouTube channel. They're absolutely action-packed. We've got bantang, we've got buffalo, we've got heaps of boars hitting the deck. So make sure to chime in on the Twin Elements YouTube. But if there's any other films that you guys want us to make for you guys that you want to see on our YouTube, whether it be cooking films, whether it be more educational films, how to fox whistle, what gear we have in our backpack, put that in on there as well. And please just send us a message at either Twin Elements or Mike James Dooms's Outdoors or Aidan Dooms's Outdoors account, and we'll get to that urgently and get it up on the YouTube for you guys. One for the calendar is the 1 year anniversary of Venture Hunting and Outdoors Springwood store in Brisbane. So on the 9th and 10th of August, they're going to be having a huge open day. There's going to be heaps of events, heaps of people there, heaps of giveaways. So make sure to come down and say hello. Aidan and I will be there, as well as the whole Venture team. So it's going to be an awesome day for the hunting community. It's just going to be a heap of awesome people, having a great time, having chats, talking about hunting, things that we all love. And it'd be great to see you guys there. So make sure to come down, say hi to Aidan and I and the rest of the Venture Hunting team. And we hope to see you all there. Lastly, thank you guys so much for all the support that we've had on the podcast and across the channel. As you can tell, Aidan and I are putting heaps into the channel this year, really trying to grow the brand and the community. This podcast being one of the resources, but also across the YouTube channel, we've got a heap of content coming out there. And just trying to improve the whole hunting industry here in Australia and abroad, and just show it in the best light possible. And that starts with education, but also inspiring people to get out in the bush and hopefully to experience some new things. And that's sort of why we're doing this podcast series with Huntin Fool and trying to open up the US to you guys, because it's incredible over there. And hopefully we can just motivate one person to, talk to Huntin Fool or just organize their own tags and get over there to experience the beauty of North America, because it's stunning. But thank you for supporting the podcast, subscribing, reviewing, and rating the podcast, sharing it with your mates. If you've got anyone that you think could benefit from this little mini-series that we're doing, that's always talked about wanting to go on a moose hunt, always talked about wanting to hunt an elk, then I'd strongly advise, they're not very long podcasts. They're like 1.5-hour podcasts. So most people commuting in Sydney or Melbourne every day, you're probably sitting in traffic for that long. So make sure to flick it across to them, and they'll appreciate getting a bit of information and education on what future hunts you guys can be going on. But once again, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Aidan and I really do appreciate it, and we'll catch you next week on the Twin Elements podcast.